2020 is now in session. Happy New Year. It's great to be back. The first order of business is to approve the minutes from, throw me a date.
December 5th.
December 5th, 2019 meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any modification or discussion? If not, all in favor of approving the minutes say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none, it's unanimous. The second order of business is to adopt the resolutions from the December 5th, 2019 resolution meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
No abstentions, none. The motions are, the resolutions are adopted, officially adopted. The board will now conduct public hearings on today's agenda. The way we work it here is that the applicant or the applicant's representative will state the reasons for the requested variance and present any material or documentation which is to be considered regarding the proposal. Next, persons wishing to speak in favor of the proposal will be given the opportunity to address the board. Then persons who wish to speak in opposition will be allowed to address the board. Finally, the applicant or representative will be given the option to make any closing arguments or comments to the board. Following the public hearings this afternoon, the board may make a decision on each application heard. The board may also decide to hold its decision until the next public hearing. If the hearing is closed, no additional information will be allowed into the record except for information that the board may request. That information will be available for public review at the zoning office in City Hall Commons. Staff will now introduce the first application.
Good afternoon. Our first public hearing today is V1928, an area variance to waive first floor dwelling units and required parking located at 500 Erie Boulevard East to establish a mixed-use building owned by Smith Building LLC located in a central business district, office and service district restricted.
Is the applicant present?
I just want to clarify for the board, you're looking at waiving the location of the dwelling units. They are not allowed on the first floor in the central business district, zoning district. So I just wanted to clarify that it's not the use of them, it's just where they are physically located.
And parking.
And the required parking.
Okay, so the applicant needs to come up and make a statement. Anybody, you can use the podium. Anybody talking at the podium, please state your name and your address first. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. My name is Matthew Paulus. I'm the developer behind this over at Paulus Development.
Lift the microphone a little bit.
Lifting the microphone up a little bit better? Okay, Matthew Paulus. I'm the developer behind the project over at Paulus Development. I guess just to speak a little bit.
Address, please.
The address of my location or of the building? I'm located over in Park Avenue, 225 Wilkinson Street, the former Dietz Lantern Factory building, which we successfully historically preserved a couple years back, and hopefully made a pretty good difference in the neighborhood. And we're looking to try and do the same thing over at the Smith Restaurant Supply building. I think everyone in this building is, in the city for this matter, is familiar with this building. The building itself has had its challenges. I guess let's start with a great thing. This building is a fantastic building from the standpoint that it has been associated with almost every major change in our transportation of this community, from the Erie Canal to the viaduct and to the future of the viaduct. This building has sort of been there in the center of it all. It's very recognizable with its historic signage and historic billboard sign. Two great things that, and it's been family owned and operated too, I think is an important thing. This building has been great for this community. It's one of the last remaining original 1880s canal buildings directly on the canal, which used to be on Erie Boulevard today. So our plan was is to really utilize that history, utilize this connection to the community to develop a product that can work. And for us, it is housing. It is something that is still very, working very well in this marketplace. But for us, it is, this would be a new endeavor for our company and myself, is affordable housing, something that we feel is a need in this marketplace. So the plan for the building would be to historically preserve the building in its current form under the guidelines under the State Historic Preservation Office and the National Parks Service to provide 37 affordable apartments that would be affordable to, on average, 80% of AMI. So we plan to have 1 at 50% of AMI, 7 at 65%, and then some that work their way up to 80% and some over 80%. So on a whole, we'll have 37 apartments and 2 commercial spaces, 1 at 1,700 square feet on Towson, and then 1 at 800 square feet on Erie Boulevard, which was a former Patrick's dry cleaning location. The building is still in great shape. It's 2 buildings, a 3-story and a 6-story building that are connected. The challenge that has always happened, I think, when everyone's looked at this building is a lot of the existing conditions. It's difficult to put together a development to utilize all the square footages without going down to the first floor and incorporating some level of residential. We have looked at different methods of utilizing that first floor and have had a difficult time, almost improbable time, of putting together a model that works there. We feel like bringing together residential on all floors, including the first floor, will be a great thing to bring a level of vibrancy not seen in that community, that part of the downtown central business district, excuse me. And we love the building. The second request that we have is on parking. That's the other challenge that we've had with this site. It's the building itself sits on the site and almost occupies all of the site, with exception for 2 areas, one to the north on Erie Boulevard and one to the east, closer to the viaduct. Both of those areas today have parking that would accommodate 11 spots on site. They do not meet current code requirements. Our plan would be to obviously meet code requirements with 9 on-site parking spots, but we're very limited in terms of what we can actually offer from a parking standpoint to meet the current code from parking requirements to have the 37 residential units and the commercial. However, the plan that we have developed would be a lesser amount of variance request compared to having commercial in the space. So at the end of the day, what we'd love to do for the building is historically feature the viaduct. We're right along the Empire State Trail as well, so we like being along the bus line, the bike line. All those things are important to us as we grow towards more of a micromobility society, we hope, and we look forward to doing it. So I don't know if there's any questions or...
Yeah. Did you say you're the developer? Are you?
Correct.
Does that mean, are you buying the building? Have you bought?
I have bought the building.
Okay. I have a question of staff. So the code says, and I'm sure I've been around here too long, I'm sure we've dealt with this. They're asking for first floor residential occupancy, and it's not in the code. So I would just like to hear the reasons why it's not in the code, so I can evaluate what what we have to evaluate.
Well, since I didn't write that part of the zoning ordinance, I can't be sure, but I can speculate that the reason for no residential units on the first floor in the central business district is to promote a more walkable, viable commercial retail space for a more vibrant downtown rather than just something being residential in nature.
So you don't think that it's safety related or anything like that?
I don't think so. I think it's more.
It's just to say, hey, we have an opportunity to.
Yep. Typically, you in downtowns, you'll want to see that more usable, storefront space that's promoting economic development and.
Is there a commercial element to this? Did you say?
There is. There will be 2 commercial spaces that we have planned. One at 1,700 square feet along Towson, and then there's an 800 square foot appendage that would be on Erie Boulevard.
In the case I read, I don't think you committed to it, but you have a feeling what one of the commercial spaces might be. Did you say something about that?
We don't have it leased yet.
I've also seen rules where, essentially the first floor is slightly lifted up, so you have to get to the building through like a small stoop, so that the the windows are higher, so it's promoting privacy as well as the walkability is sort of the issue.
That was kind of the safety thing I was alluding to.
I think.
Privacy, but also, so you
I
can't
think you
break
could
in as easy.
you could, that could be a consideration, but I think the walkability and the issue of people just seeing directly into somebody's living room has usually been the reason that.
And the new zoning code is consistent with the old?
I believe it is for this issue.
Okay, thanks. Other questions?
Just comments, Stu, you might recall, we've approved this in a few cases downtown, Lost on Willow, Harold Commons, to name a few. I know that there's other buildings downtown that have the same, yeah.
Requirement that they have the stoop that goes up.
How much higher than the sidewalk is the floor on the first floor?
Good afternoon, Mike. It depends on what elevation you're on. On the north elevation, they must have infilled the Erie Canal like higher up on the building versus on the Water Street side. So Water Street, I think we're looking at probably 4 or 5 feet, but on parts of the north elevation on Erie Boulevard, you could be like 3 feet. There's a couple feet difference there, and it's more towards the commercial spaces, like where Towson meets Erie. It comes up like if you were at the coffee shop, it's pretty high up. You can see where elevation kind of breaks, but it moves. But it's definitely on the north elevation. It's a lot closer. You would have windows a little bit closer to the ground. To answer your question.
Will any of the units be wheelchair accessible?
So we plan to make the first floor apartments, and we're still designing them to make sure that we can. There's a bunch of challenges here. One of them is egress, but based upon where the parking lot's located on the east side of the building, we're planning to create an entrance there where that will be on grade into the building. But the buildings themselves are on two different. The second floor of the 3-story building does not align with the second floor of the 6-story building. So there's challenges to creating accessibility between the two of those that we're still working through. But our current plan is to have the first floor of the 6-story building ADA accessible.
I saw a question somewhere about the billboard on top of the building. Is that going to remain?
Yes, that would be our plan. We have some work to do on our end in terms of getting the city some records on it. I believe that was brought to our attention that there is no record of that sign. But from a historic preservation standpoint, yes, we do plan to preserve that.
So you'd be grandfathered. You'll be using historic tax credits for the project?
Correct.
The little area where you had 3 or 4 cars parked on the north side, if you weren't looking for every possible parking spot, would you use that in some other way, a more pedestrian-friendly way, more green space? Or do you value those 1 or 2 parking spots?
The parking spots, I think the challenge for us is like even with the 2 commercial spaces that we have, so you have that 1,700 square foot space, the user that we can do there too, because, you know, what can we find that someone could bring in there? So the parking spots are pretty valuable just in terms of bringing some level of commercial to the building. And we feel that's the case there. On Water Street, you know, there is some street parking closer towards, Water Street Bagel and areas closer to City Hall, but we're challenged along those couple blocks with street parking. So any parking that we can, to answer your question, any parking that we can provide, it is very valuable, although it's very limited.
From a marketing perspective, we can discourage people who have cars or?
Well, I don't think we can. Whether someone has a car, they don't have a car. I think the style of the project that we're constructing is going to appeal to people who probably don't have a car. However, if someone were to have a car, that'd obviously be their preference. We are on the bus line. I think more important to us, and I think, Mike, to your point, is instead of green space, our emphasis, as you probably see on the plan, is more on Water Street and the Empire Bike Trail. To me, that's more important. We're going to invest into that area, so that feels important and that encourages people to feel safe down there. So that's where I'd like to focus our resources on the outside of the building. We do have a lot of historic preservation, a lot of old window openings that have been modified. I plan to restore the historic facade in the same way. I think if you saw the historic picture, the historic Smith signage that was there. Building.
gonna restore the windows to the way they were 100 years ago?
Yep. I think if you looked, especially on what would be the west elevation on Towson, you know, they've been modified. I think almost all the 3 stories, 2 of the 3 stories of the 3-story building have been drastically modified. Those will be brought back to their original openings and put in with, you know, historically significant and approved windows.
Other questions? Questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anybody here who wishes to speak in favor of the application? Is there anybody? Yes, okay. Go ahead.
Hi, Lauren Barron from Weaver, Mancuso, and Frame, and we represent the applicant. We're attorneys for the applicant. Just one additional quick.
Your address, please.
Oh, my address is 268 Alexander Street, Rochester, New York. So one additional point, just to clarify regarding the parking. So the current parking on the site, since it has been used for commercial retail use, is pre-existing non-conforming already. It actually, under the current code, would require 49 parking spaces for what it's currently being used for. So in inserting the residential use actually only requires 43 parking spaces. So the proposed use has a less intensive parking requirement than even the current use and is more in conformance with the code. So that's the only additional point I wanted to make, unless there's any other questions.
Are you able to answer any other questions? Like the block across the street that had a building torn down within the last few years, is that available for parking for your tenants?
That question I'm unable to answer. I'm not sure if Matt would be better able to answer that.
Go ahead.
Just a quick clarification that, as their attorney, rather than being considered comments in favor, this will be considered part of the presentation.
Yeah, okay.
The majority of the parcels, there's several multiple parcels there that are owned by entities which we believe to be controlled by the same owners of the NYMEX building. So there is, I think we have understood there to be interest in making that a parking field for that project in particular. We're not sure if we have competing interests, but we're not looking at that as a long-term option for us to park based upon those interests.
I see quite a few cars parking there now. I just wondered if
Those are the construction workers that they have working over at the building,
And those are
on the grass.
housing projects as well.
I'm sorry?
Those are housing projects as well.
They have not, just prior knowledge, they have not indicated their intention for that site formally.
They're just cleaning it up.
But the former NYMEX building is a housing project.
Yeah, right over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But the other parcels, they haven't indicated formally what their plan is to do.
are there other parking resources in the vicinity?
Yes, for lease. And some of those we've had conversations. The majority of them are owned by other developers with other intentions. I think
I mean, I imagine if
there are a couple opportunities that we're evaluating. A lot of those are on shorter-term basis, but we're exploring that, and we will take advantage of anything that presents itself.
if people are renting and working downtown and they have a car, they could park further away because they won't use it that often.
Right. Yeah, and I think a good example of that is Merchants Commons, where you have people parking on James Street as part of living there, and I'm sure some people who work there as well. But
Well, you got any other questions? You have something?
Just one more additional point. With the December 30th letter that our office submitted, there was a map indicating there were several on-street, I think over 80 on-street parking spaces that are around that area as well. So just going off of Matt's point. Thank you.
Anybody wish to speak in favor of the application? Anybody wish to speak against the application? Hearing none, we're going to move on to our next case.
Okay, our next public hearing is V 1929, a use variances to waive permitted uses at 102 and 104 East Kennedy Street. The proposal is to establish, maintain a 3-family dwelling. The owner is Jermaine Armfield, and the zoning is residential class AA.
Afternoon.
Terry Luckett with the Greater Syracuse Land Bank, 431. Terry Luckett with the Greater Syracuse Land Bank, 431 East Fayette Street. 102 East Kennedy Street is a 3-story, 3-family brick building near the intersection of South Salina and East Kennedy Streets. According to assessment records, the building was constructed in 1925 and the occupancy was reduced from more than 3 units to just 3 units sometime after 1985. Jermaine Armfield, who is behind me here, purchased the building in November of 2018. The land bank submitted a re-subdivision application to zoning to sell him a portion of our lot next door that contained his driveway. The zoning office informed us that in order that 102 East Kennedy Street is a non-conforming use because in 1990 the property was rezoned from RB to RAA, which only allows single and 2-family dwellings, and a variance must be applied for to expand a non-conforming use, even if, in this case, it's a legal non-conforming use. I'm here today to ask the board for a use variance to allow the property to operate as it's currently configured. I'd like to go through the standards of proof. Reasonable return. If the variance is not granted, and if Mr. Armfield still wanted to pursue the re-subdivision, he would have to either convert the property to a single-family or to a 2-family building. Both options would require significant investment into renovations, and the size and configuration of the building is not suited to those configurations. We've provided pro formas to you to demonstrate that Mr. Armfield could not realize a reasonable return in either of those scenarios. Number 2, unique circumstances. This building and the property it sits on present an unusual circumstance that differs from the other single and 2-family homes on the street, are Victorian-style stick-built homes. The building also occupies nearly 100% of the existing frontage, and there's no way to provide access to off-street parking that's located behind the building. Therefore, expanding the non-conforming use is bringing the property into compliance with the off-street parking requirements for multifamily properties. Number 3, essential character of the locality. The approval of this variance to expand the non-conforming 3-unit dwelling will not change the essential character of the neighborhood. This block of East Kennedy Street contains 2 other brick, commercial, and apartment buildings. This building blends in perfectly with the surrounding architecture, and it provides a smooth transition from the residential feel of East Kennedy Street into the more commercial feel of South Salina Street. Allowing the expansion of the non-conforming use will allow the property owner to provide legal access to parking spaces located behind his building, which brings the property into conformance with the zoning code. Number 4, the hardship is not self-created. The driveway for 102 East Kennedy Street is located on 104 East Kennedy. Historically, it may have shared a driveway with a building formerly located at 104, which has since been demolished. This was not a self-created hardship. That's all. Mr. Armfield is here if you have any questions.
Could you tell us more about the driveway and the land that you're adding in?
I don't know if you went out there to see it. There are some pictures. The driveway.
I was there yesterday, but it was covered in snow, so it's.
Oh, okay. So there's actually a driveway to 104, but it's or to 102, Jermaine's building, but it's actually located on 104. So I don't know how that happened, but that's the way it is.
And you're re-subdividing to bring up that?
Yeah, that's how this all came up. We wanted to sell him, basically sell him the driveway.
How many parking spaces will be allowed on that lot?
3 can fit in back.
Any idea how many units there were originally in 1925 when the?
I asked David Clifford. He said it was reduced from more than 3. He didn't tell me from how many. He must not have.
Never a single family. It was never, wasn't built as a single family house.
Oh, no.
I wonder if there were 2 units per floor once rather than 1.
2 units per floor. Oh, I don't know, there's one staircase in the front.
When's the last time the building was used?
It's occupied now.
Oh, it is occupied.
Oh, yeah, this is his building, it's
Oh, this is-
legally,
This is not something he purchased from the land bank, or is it?
nope. No, we were just gonna sell him a piece of land to go with his building.
Oh,
Um,
oh, okay, and
yeah,
that's how
we-
you got involved.
Right.
You're very lucky. Smart lady.
So a question for staff. The reason why this case is before us is because of this change, this with the lot, the re-subdivision, right? Otherwise, if this didn't occur, would it still be considered a legal three-family and exist?
Yes, you
as
can
non-con-
expand a non-conforming use.
Got it, okay.
Either in floor area or by lot size. So that's why, when they applied for the re-subdivision, that
That's what I
triggered
thought.
this.
Okay, thank
We're
you.
not approving 3 units, it's a non-conforming
You have to approve a use variance because they're expanding the non-conforming use as if it
Expansion,
is illegal. Yeah,
and if they weren't expanding, there would not be an issue, because it's
That's
already
correct.
non-conforming.
that's correct.
Okay.
It probably goes without saying, but the land bank doesn't foresee any issues with losing that 12 foot of frontage from the next lot in its potential future sale. It's 48, I mean, it's 48 feet, so I'm sure it's.
Yeah, it's still a buildable lot, so.
You wanna make another unbuildable lot?
Other questions?
Well, there are these issues here. The sidewalk appears to be, I'm looking at the comments from the transportation person. Says the sidewalk appears to be poor hazardous. Sidewalk to the driveway needs to be addressed. Driveway needs to be fenced or physically restricted. Front steps are shown to be encroaching on the right-of-way. Will these things be addressed if we?
He submitted the encroachment application, so that's being addressed. I don't know where that comment about the fence there's nothing in the zoning code that provides a fence or a barrier between a driveway and, I guess I would take objection to that comment.
Okay.
There's nothing in the code that requires it, so I don't know where it's coming from.
Screening is not required for that parking area?
That's from, are you reading from the transportation
Page
planner?
56 in our packet.
Yeah,
The transportation.
I could add something here.
yeah, hang on one second. Oh, well, the transportation planner is saying that the driveway should be fenced or physically restricted on all sides to prevent cross-access between parcels and disallow errant parking on the grass or the bare earth. That's a comment from the transportation planner. When we get proposals, we send them out for seeker purposes, and also to collect comments from the different departments that have the expertise
I
in these
understand
things.
that. I'm
So
just
that's where it came
saying I
from.
don't really agree that we have to put a barrier between there because there's nothing.
So
Not a
the
requirement.
Board of Zoning Appeals can put conditions on this, and they
Okay,
do.
so I guess I want to say, I would like to strike that comment because I don't think it's necessary.
Okay,
I
so,
don't want that to appear in the resolution to say that we have to put a fence there.
well, the Board of Zoning
that's up
Appeals
to-
may impose
that
that
does let
condition,
them
so
do that.
you can't, that's up to the board.
Okay, I'm asking for it to be,
But what you're saying is, that's their recommendation,
Yes,
not based on, yeah, okay.
Reading Neil Burke's comment, it looks like he's saying the concern is not necessarily for a barrier, but to design it in such a way so that parking off of the driveway into the next lot is not easily done. That's how I would interpret that comment. So is the plan to repave the driveway right now?
the
No plans for
driveway's
any
fine.
improvements?
The driveway's fine.
No, I get that. There's just no plans right now for any improvements. It's just to do the transaction for the land. And I haven't seen or heard any comments that there's been parking on that other lot. that you
Not
guys-
to our knowledge.
Yeah, and you guys own it, okay. That would be my interpretation of Neil's comment. He's concerned about people parking over the line, essentially. But if the driveway design isn't conducive to that, that's that.
As far as the sidewalk, I think the city could condemn the sidewalk. They're not, because those sidewalks are okay. Right? And if the city needs to condemn them,
Page 69 has a picture of the driveway next to the building. That's not covered in snow.
It would be my opinion that putting in screening there before the use of potential new build or something next door was determined would be premature to that lot's viability for sale.
In the new driveway.
Okay, if it's not a problem, I don't know that we need to make it bigger.
Other questions?
There has been no problem in the past with people parking on that lot, have there? Residents or? No, there hasn't been a problem in the past, no. Thank you.
Anything else? Anything else? Thank you. Thank you. Anybody here, would you like to make a comment? Anybody here wish to speak in favor of the application? Anybody wish to speak against it? Hearing none, we'll close our cases. I recommend that we go right to our deliberation on these cases. We can do new business afterwards. Is that okay with everybody? Okay, B1928, the area variance for the Smith, to redevelop the Smith building. Is there a motion?
Stu, before we vote on that, I just want to say that I'm going to abstain from voting on this case. I am Senior Vice President of the Community Preservation Corporation. We have financed the acquisition for Paulus Development, and we will, I believe, finance the the construction as well. So for those reasons, I'm going to abstain from voting.
So we enough people, fine. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I will second.
Hey, your rationale.
Let's go through the tests. Will there be a change in the neighborhood character? Obviously, a very large improvement in the neighborhood character by this project. Restoring the building the way it looked in 1925 and other changes. Are there alternate solutions available so that a variance is not needed? It would be nice if there were more commercial space being made available in this building. It's a challenge in all cities that are seeing street level space becoming vacant, and it has something to do with Amazon and the national changes in the way we buy things. I think that the best solution for this building to see that it's restored is to allow residential in there now. Someday maybe commercial will be more viable and things will change, but I think that may be the only option that's viable at the moment. The magnitude of the variance being requested is of some size. It's a sizable part of the first floor that's going to be residential, but I think that it's going to be, in the larger scope of things, it's quite acceptable. Will there be an adverse effect to the surrounding neighborhood if this variance is approved? This building will be a great improvement to that neighborhood. Many of us were looking at it as potentially being destroyed with the new viaduct came through, and it's a benefit to the whole community that it's still going to be there, and even more so that it's going to be restored in the way that it sounds like the developers have in mind. Self-created difficulty, building with this history in that difficult location, it's hard to say that it's self-created. They have to take this building as it is, and sounds like their plans are making the best of that.
I agree.
Anybody else have any comments or anything? I'll call the question. All those in favor of approving the variance say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Yes, I'll abstain.
Okay, variance is approved. Next, case is V1929, use variance, 102-104 East Kennedy Street. Is there a motion?
I will move it.
I'll second.
Move to what, for the
Oh,
record?
to approve.
To approve, okay.
And I'll second that.
So going through the use variance test, the applicant cannot realize a reasonable rate of return. The cost to convert the existing three-family structure into a one- or two-family structure is prohibitive to its continued financial viability. The alleged hardship relating to the property in question is unique and does not apply to a substantial portion of the neighborhood. There are a number of single and two-family homes on the street with driveways and off-street parking. This basically brings this house that is in its own unique circumstance into compliance with the rest of the neighborhood, and provides, frankly, off-street parking with some benefits to the neighborhood. The requested use variance, if granted, will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood. This is, I think, as minor a use variance as we can get just to bring this lot into compliance, and bring this building into full compliance and the transitional character of the neighborhood as mentioned. Finally, the hardship has not been self-created. The land bank owns this parcel, the owner does not, and they're actually bringing this back into compliance, but I again think it's a valuable addition to the neighborhood.
We need a secret declaration as well. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, we are making a negative declaration.
Are you?
I'm making a negative declaration.
All right, thank you.
Nick, you got anything?
Nope, nothing to add. I agree with everything
Anybody
Nora
else?
just said.
Okay, all those are in favor of approving the variance, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, it passed unanimously. New business. The 1830 Loomis Avenue time extension request.
Well, Lisa's gonna read that.
I think this is my first time. Do I go up to the podium?
You can do it from here.
Okay, this is a time extension request for variance V 1830 at 301 to 303 Loomis Avenue. The board adopted and released a use variance on December 6, 2018 that waived uses permitted in a residential Class A1 zoning district. The variance allowed the establishment of a two-family dwelling. The applicant is requesting a 12-month time extension to December 16th, 2020.
Yes, that's what it says. Any questions?
Does anybody recall this one?
I think Nora had said.
I mean, a time extension,
It's a home headquarters project. It's financing related or something, I would assume.
okay,
Their letter says that no developer has come forward yet to purchase the property.
I'll make a motion to approve the time extension.
I'll second.
any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, no. V 1835 302.
Excuse me, before you move on, I just wanted to check for V 1929, Nora, whether you were conditioning any of those comments on the approval? Or no conditions, okay.
Well, then they should reopen. She should do, because we don't know if they want to reopen.
Okay, let's just, that's a good idea. Let's just reopen it briefly, and just to clarify whether everybody who voted in favor agrees that it should be with no condition.
I just want to raise the issue, I agree.
You agree, okay.
All
So,
those in favor say aye.
Aye.
okay, just to clarify.
Okay.
Thank you.
302, 304 Gear Avenue, similar. We adopted December 16th, 2018, a use variance for a three-family dwelling, and they're requesting a 12-month extension. Work permit September, the third kitchen has been removed. Just sounds like they're,
Sounds like they're well into construction on it. Just need
they
more
request a
time.
few months past expected completion. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve it.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
No. No authorizations for January 30th yet, or you don't think there will be?
Well, this would be the time to authorize, and we don't have any that are ready.
So we'll come in anyway to approve resolutions? Is that, so we should anticipate that? Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So.
Second.
All those in favor? say
Aye.
Aye. Adjourn. Thank you.
It's the cold.
Yeah, right.
It's on video.
second, Nora. Oh. No, Nikki, no, for this one. That helps. I just
Yeah,
do
but-
my, or
yeah.
MC or
I'm
MS.
sure before.
I'll pass that
It's saying they're gonna give up the black box.
I'm not, I think
But it's not gonna happen.
ready, it's just waiting.
Is that what they're saying? Who's an answer?
Accidentally, yes.
Yeah, okay. What?